We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H.
Nick is trying to nail down where he's going to place his acoustic panels in his basement home theater. He has a door and equipment rack to consider, so things need to be planned in detail. I don't think acoustic panels have to be planned in detail, but we'll go on to that. Anthony Grimaldi proposed a layout of...
Grimaldi? What? Where did an L and a
Grimaldi.
D come from?
Grimaldi. Somewhere, whatever. What did I say?
You said Grimaldi. I'm like an L and a D from an N?
That sounds...
I mean, those are tall letters, and N is a short little squat letter.
I think that he should change his name. Grimaldi sounds much more impressive than Grimani. Grimani. Come on, Grimani. Grimani's get speed up. Grimaldi casts spells that turn you into rabbits. Grimaldi is a scary name. Grimani. No. Sorry, dude.
Wow.
Anyways, I've never met the man. He maybe casts spells. Who do I know? Propose... a layout of alternating absorption and diffusion panels. But he suggests placing them asymmetrically. So if you put an absorber panel on the left wall directly across from the right wall, would be a diffusion panel. Then you'd put a diffusion... Well, we got it. Okay.
Yes,
Is there a method to this asymmetrical madness, or would it create asymmetrical reflections and sound? This is my problem with this little thing here, okay? Because what you start with, usually what you start with an absorption panel at the first reflection point.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you're going with some of the newer stuff that Dr. Toole has said, you are still doing that. So I am starting with an absorptive panel, to the left, to the sides of my front speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Then, if you want to start alternating at that point, your next panel forward would be absorption on one side and diffusion on the other side. I don't see any possible benefit to having at your first reflection point on one side a diffuser, on the other side an absorber. I feel like that's a bad choice. Like, fundamentally incorrect. I feel like.
I think, to explain a little bit, Anthony Grimaldi is typically dealing with rooms that cost about $300,000 and up.
They're very
which means
big.
They're large.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about a fairly skinny, like 2-foot wide diffusion panel next to a 2-foot wide absorption panel in a room that's 35 feet long, and then you alternate that on the other side of the room, effectively it's really not that different, right?
No.
But in a considerably smaller space that we're dealing with that isn't a $300,000 room that's 35 feet long or longer, at least for the first reflection points, I very much agree with Tom. And what I would maybe suggest is, like, Nick is very strongly considering GIC acoustics for his panels,
right,
because they're more affordable and they still look
yep,
nice and perform very well. They offer absorption panels with diffusion on top of it. And if you fall into the camp that says, I don't want to strongly absorb my first reflections, which is a completely reasonable
yep,
way that you want your room to sound,
yep,
but you still want to treat those side walls, I would suggest going for one of the combo panels, at least for the first reflection points. I would say go for the combo panel that has the scatter plate on top of an absorption panel. Yeah. That's what I would go for here. And just do two of them, right?
Now, as far as alternating
worlds,
back and forth, first of all, I don't agree that you have to have everything planned out really well. These panels are all exactly the same size.
Yeah,
they are. So
2 feet by 4 feet.
You can hang them however you want in the end, unless you're planning on having stripes that correspond, through your room that correspond with the color of the panel. I don't see why you can't just experiment with this. But if it were me, I would walk in that room and go, dude, how come they don't match on both sides? It would drive me nuts. It would drive me crazy. You can't get the
fabric covered one, so it's pretty hard to tell. But
if you put something that's clearly a diffuser and on one wall and the other wall has an absorber, I'd be like, nope, that's wrong. You messed up. You see, you got them this way on this side and this way on the other side. You should fix that. You can experiment with this. You just figure out where you're going to place the panels and don't worry about what kind of panel you're going to place there. Buy the right number, or more than the right number, you might have to, and then figure it out.
But yeah, honestly, for the first two panels on your right wall and the first two panels on your left wall, the ones that are farthest forward, I would very strongly consider the GIC panels that are absorption panels with the scatter plate on top, and you get the best of all worlds that way.
Yeah. He says we've talked about Anthem receivers, and he's thinking about buying one and spending the extra money versus a Denon or Marantz. He loves what we described as their real-time on-screen display for nailing down subwoofer placement prior to running EQ. He also loves being able to take two sets of measurements and easily switching between them, since he will be personally using both rows of seats in his theater. Aside from the price, the only thing that might hold him back from Anthem receiver is lack of dynamic EQ for listening at various volume levels, and the fact that it doesn't offer any EQ correction above 5 kilohertz. So does Anthem offer anything equivalent to dynamic EQ?
So interestingly, first of all, you don't have to go to their very top of the line to do a full 7.2.4 setup. You can go with their MRX 720. Now that one only has 7 amplifiers built in. All right, only 3 of them, I think, or it's either 3 or 5, but only a limited number of them are actually Class A, B, and the other ones are like Class D and less powerful for this rounds. But the thing is, the MRX 720, even though it only amplifies 7 channels itself, it can still process 11 speakers. It still has 11.2 or 7.2.4 pre-outs. So you were probably going to get some external amps anyway, so you don't have to go to the top of the line, and that way you can keep the price a little bit down. Then that one actually lets you have 4 different configurations, not just 2. So you can have 4 completely separate configurations. That includes different ARC EQ settings for each of those 4. So you have lots of flexibility there. And then they have Dolby Volume. And they have an excellent implementation of Dolby Volume that lets you turn the dynamic range limiting off, but keep the frequency changing depending on what volume level you're listening back to, which makes it very equivalent to Odyssey Dynamic EQ. So they have a solution. It happens to be in the form of Dolby Volume, but they have a wonderful implementation of Dolby Volume that lets you turn the dynamic range compression off. So yeah, it really is starting to look like a great solution. It is still more expensive, but it doesn't have to be. It's $2,500 Canadian. I don't know what it is. Probably $2,000 or $2,300 or something American.
It says $2,500 US.
Oh, okay.
$24.99. So we saved a buck over the Canadian version, I guess.
But yeah, I mean, it is more expensive. But if you go with that one, it's not insanely more expensive. And if these features are really attractive to you, that's it can make a very compelling case.
Do you still have to send the thing in for them to process it and give it back to you?
Oh no, you just have to have a computer. You have to.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, it's Dirac where it has to be sent to Dirac.
That's
the Emotiva implementation of Dirac. You have to send it to Dirac for them to do the number crunching.
So the whole reason he's concerned about EQing higher frequencies is because he'll have an acoustically transparent screen, and he's thinking he might need to compensate for it in the treble. So what are our thoughts on that?
Not if you get the Seymour AV screens that we've been recommending.
Yeah. Not only that, I'll be honest with you, it's not something I'm super duper worried about.
Yeah, no, the high directional frequencies, you don't really want to EQ them anyway.
Yeah, I know that people talk about it, and there's some people who really talk about it and are really concerned about it, and like that, they talk about it all the time. Okay, and they won't recommend the receiver because of this. And for me, I'm like, it's so more in your head than it is outside your head that I don't think it's a real issue.
Yeah, I don't really like how it sounds. Move your head 3 inches. It sounds different.
Right. It's that directional anyways. So I don't really see it as being a huge problem. But that's just me.
No, EQs are very important for your bass.
Yes.
And Art can do a very nice job down there. So I'm not. Yeah, there are though. I mean, there are the screens, the old perforated screens that required high frequency equalization because they attenuated the high frequencies so much. This whole time we've been recommending woven Seymour AV screens to you. Those just don't have that kind of high frequency attenuation. You don't need the EQ compensation for those. It's the old perforated screens with the actual punch holes in them.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.